No, that's carried. Can we move to item 21, which is the response to review into management bore water security? This was the paper that we deferred from an earlier meeting, which was just an update on our response to the review into the management of bore water security, which was otherwise known as the Bruce Robertson report. I'm very pleased to see that we've got reporting happening on the items that it contains. I'm suggesting that we request staff to continue monitoring the role of quality assurance and compliance within the Three Waters unit and the wider organisation, which is one of the recommendations out of the report, and to report back to the ITI committee through the Three Waters and waste water, is it? Three Waters and waste. Oh no, bi-monthly update report. And but there was another component of that I wanted noted, which was including it was to include an update on central government proposals in relation to the new drinking water safety regime. So I think it's really important that we're constantly keeping an eye on that, but have a reporting line through our committee at the same time. So to continue, so maybe instead of if you just add to well, I don't know why it's called 4 because it's really 3, but if you add to that and go request staff to report on central government proposals in relation to any new drinking water safety regime. I mean, we know that it's coming, it's just a question of what it contains, and regime, and then sort of a comma, and to continue monitoring the role of quality assurance and compliance within, and then maybe instead of and to report back, just change and to, take out and to, and change it to reporting back to the ITI committee through the Three Waters and Waste bi-monthly update report. Pauline?
Yeah, thank you. That's good. Just the definition of the wider organisation, how far does that go? Does that extend out to the contractors, or is that getting too involved in the management there? Was that your interpretation? Would that be?
I think that what was proposed by Bruce Robertson was that there had to be a supporting and enhancement of the role of quality assurance and compliance within the Three Waters unit.
Yep.
What staff have recommended in the status update, that this actually requires a risk management and quality assurance approach fully integrated not only across the unit but across council. So it specifically says council, but I think that the issue's been raised about the role of city care in relation to our Three Waters, and but the organisation can report on that. I just don't think that it's appropriate that we call out a specific contractor in relation to this, even though it's our contractor.
Yeah, and I think we've pretty much been assured that the communication and the expectations are filtering down to those contractors, whoever they might be. Okay.
Yeah. Would you like to move that?
Happy to move it.
Pauline, seconded by Mike Davidson. Any discussion? Yanni?
I did wonder, it's been some time since we've met with local MPs, and I'm just mindful of previous engagement with central government where they may not have the same understanding that we do about what work we're doing as an organisation and at a governance level. I wonder if we should actually be meeting with local MPs to talk through what our response has been, and also just to, you know, I guess advocate that we do not want forced chlorination on our water.
For sure. So could we have a new 4, which just says invite local members of parliament to discuss the new drinking water safety regime and other water matters with elected members. So to brief to brief them on our progress and to discuss the new drinking water. So that we're briefing them. Just make it and to brief them on our progress.
It's just the hot water cylinder issue.
Yeah.
Are we able to get an update? Just request a memo from staff.
What?
The hot water cylinder issue.
I've got a note.
For sure.
I've got a note to follow up that online from this morning.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, I'll put the motion. Ref?
I was just going to speak to it.
Yep.
Just really, I mean, yeah, it's a good report, and all the bits of work mentioned in the appendix are good. I think what we've got to be really clear around our contracts, and we're doing a Section 17A review, is that we're very explicit with contractors, as we do in a way with parks and maintenance. Like if you see a full bin or a broken piece of furniture, report it. The contractors have to who are you know doing our water maintenance services have to be really onto the fact that they're in charge of the most critical asset of the city, and you just can't let stuff go. They see something that's not right, it's got to be dealt with, end of story. And I think within our contracts, when we reset those in 2020, that has to be made very critical. Thanks.
I know that it's debate, but I'm tempted to sort of ask for that to be added to the resolutions. Because I actually think it's a really important point. So maybe if we could just write in a 4, right, instead of, so insert a new 4 in between that and 5. Yeah. And just say, request staff to make explicit in all of the contractual arrangements.
Something about the importance of preventative maintenance.
Yeah, and all of
That's
the
really what you're
contractual
talking about.
relationships
If they see something.
in relationship to our.
It's our
I mean, it's
proactive
particularly the
approach.
drinking water safety regime. To the drinking water safety regime. All
What was your word into?
To highlight the importance
and all
of preventative
contractual
maintenance.
arrangements, that should be to the, and all, relating, all contractual arrangements relating to the drinking water safety regime, the importance of the security of the security of our drinking water supply.
I think it's actually about it's about the preventive maintenance. So instead of being reactive, we need them to be proactive. So if they see an issue coming, then they can actually solve it before it becomes an issue. That's really, sorry to kind of paraphrase.
I mean, that's why I mentioned the Section 17A, because I presume that
Yep.
will be part of the review in actually how we handle the maintenance of critical assets, that we may not want to have a sort of a contractual relationship, which says do this bit,
Okay.
end of story.
Take out the word of
so-
contractual and just
Well, there
leave
has
it
to be
as
an amount of
arrangements.
fluid no pun intended, because if you have a role within your contract to do things, but when you're doing things and you see, actually, this is going to be a problem shortly, or this can be, let's sort it out now.
Yeah.
That's really what I
but
think we're saying.
I've got it in there. Request staff to make explicit in all of the arrangements relating to the drinking water safety regime, highlighting the importance of the security of our drinking water supply.
And following on from what Raf's been saying, do our contract managers within council have enough freedom to support that? Because that's part of the issue, isn't it? That we've got to get sign off, we've got to do this, or is it in the budget? But if there is an issue, or have they got the freedom, and maybe that's a change of attitude as well we need.
That's that whole quality assurance and compliance role, and it is about, and the whole recommendation is about lifting it out of the compliance model and into that more proactive rather than reactive stance. So it's not about, complying with what we're required to comply with. It's about making sure that we've got a secure drinking water supply.
It's about contracting critical services.
Yeah.
So you can do that, but you have to have very specific contracts that have a high level of criticality, as opposed to mowing a piece of lawn, which is not the end of the world.
No, that's right.
Yanni
and then Phil, then Vicky.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think...
Are we in debate?
Sorry, I sidetracked out of the debate just to...
Are we back in?
Just to note something. I mean, sometimes people raise something in debate that if they'd raised as a question, I might have been able to
No, that's
flick
fine.
it
I
in.
don't have. That's great. I'm just wondering, are we back
We're
in?
in debate.
Right, thank you.
Right, Yanni.
Yeah, I just wanted to just pick up on the point that Tim and Raf have made. I do think one of the issues we have as a council is actually prioritisation of our spend. And, we do need to keep this in context. Actually, our bores, although the standards the bar may have improved in terms of, or been lifted in terms of the standards that they should be, the transgressions we had on those versus our reticulated network were a lot less. So, we need to be mindful of, we've got a huge amount of infrastructure to fix post-earthquake, and we need to make sure that we're actually spending money in the areas where we're seeing the transgressions, not just the areas that we're not, which is this whole issue with our bore water security, as I see it. So, I would still love to hear from the contractors about how things were from their point of view, because I don't know hand on heart whether they weren't reporting things up to us and they weren't being done, or whether they were reporting up but we didn't have the budget and therefore we couldn't fix it, or actually if they said actually the risk is so small that it's not worth spending money on this when we've got greater priorities around our reticulated supply. But fundamentally, I think it's really good that we've got this report. It's good to get governance oversight of what is a critical thing in regards to our water. And I think, we should always be aiming to be world-class in terms of the provision of an untreated water supply that's safe to our community. And I think this, report looks at what we're doing to do that. And it's really critical that we meet with our members of parliament and explain to them very clearly the huge amount of work we've been put in to address these issues, because the last thing I want as a city is to have forced chlorination on us by people that are ignorant to the work that our staff and our organisation's been doing to try and ensure that we can have unchlorinated water for our future.
Thank you. Someone else had their Phil and Tim.
I think there's a great example of excellent work that our council have done, really, and we're a long way forward, especially around the board heads. I guess too, though, it highlights the wider issues around water safety, and and I'm glad we've got reference to to contractors, and of course that in itself is wide too, where other contractors who aren't there to do water work but doing other infrastructure work at times cut into our water pipes, and transgressions pollution can follow from that. So it's a ongoing challenge, and I guess the other part too, outside of this as well, we need to keep an eye on is the groundwater around some of the old dump sites. How we make sure that in fact we can protect those areas as well as possible. So, but this around the boreheads particularly has been excellent work and huge effort by our staff, and thank you to them.
Tim, then Vicky.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a real sign about going forward, and it is a a critical asset. So the critical asset, you can't be an ambulance at the bottom of the hill. So I think the preventive maintenance is essential, and to be given the contractors to be given the freedom to work with our contract managers and our in-house contract managers to be given the support and the freedom to be able to assist our contractors in reacting, because to sit back and say, oh look, we're going to have to add this to next year's budget or something, that we have to weigh up, is this a critical asset? Well, of course it is, so therefore we've got to keep on top of it, and if that's going to shift budgets around, when we as councillors have to support our staff in doing that. So I think it's been a great report. One of the things I think we do need to do is work with EQC to ensure that if in the future something happens, then that private laterals are not paid out, that they insist on fixing them, because they are a problem into our waterways, and it's about the horizontal infrastructure, getting our water from the pump stations to the household is critical, and that's where a lot of the contamination can happen. So we've got a few things to think about in the future, but I do think that's one thing that we should be supporting our staff in, and making it clear with EQC that the laterals have to be repaired, not paid out. Thanks.
Vicky.
Thank you. I think the report's excellent in relation to all of the things that it's dealt with. The difficulty that we have is that there is one issue that we don't deal with, and that's the nitrate incursion. And so it doesn't come up as a risk in all of the water stuff that we're doing. So safe, sustainable water is now one of our 2 overarching objectives. This deals really well with the whole issue around boreheads, then reticulation network, and not having to chlorinate, all those things. But the statement from ECAN that the nitrate incursion from the Waimakariri area is in the post is not helpful, and their lack of action is also incredibly unhelpful. And while it's an ECAN responsibility, the impact is on the Christchurch City Council. So somewhere in every water report, I think we need to include the risks that we face from nitrates, the fact that the drinking water standards in relation to nitrates probably need changing and certainly lowering from 11.3, that the new research that's been done overseas indicates that we need new research here, and that ECAN's proposal to not deal with this adequately for the next 20 years actually needs to be challenged totally and full on.
Yeah, I'm just going to respond to that before I call you, Pauline, to close the debate. So, I mean, I agree that the issue that was raised for the Bruce Robertson report related specifically to losing our secure status in terms of the drinking water standards that apply, and the work that we've done in order to respond to that. And I have to say that I just want to reinforce something that I've said on several occasions. The drinking water improvement program, or drinking water supply improvement program that has been established and put in place by the council is excellent, and it is working really hard to make sure that we get all of our infrastructure into a position where we can continue to deliver drinking water that is demonstrably safe, and that will continue to have good public health outcomes for our residents. I'm writing to the Ministers for the Environment, Research, Science and Innovation, and Health and Research, in order to re-emphasise the point that Councillor Buck has made, which is that we have to get some evidence base for that correlation between nitrate levels in drinking water and colorectal cancer. It is absolutely vital that we're deeply concerned about the published Danish study that found that correlation between what are relatively low nitrate levels compared to the current maximum acceptable value, which is prescribed by the current Drinking Water Standards New Zealand. So I've raised this with ministers because I think it's so vital. I mean, we can do all that we can, but somewhere in the future, someone's going to find themselves in a position where the cost of removing the nitrate or the way that that's done makes it unsustainable for our community to have access to the pristine water supply that we have access to now. So it is a top issue, and we are addressing it. I have raised it with ministers, and I will be raising it again as well. The Christchurch West Melton Water Management Committee has written to the Ministry of Health and received an utterly unsatisfactory reply, which I will be referring to in my correspondence with the ministers as well. But I think we have to find a source of funding, which is why I'm going to focus the letter also to the minister that's able to assist with funding research, because I think that's really important. Just the last thing that that I just want to say is, and I want to repeat something that I said earlier in the week, and that is that the council fully agrees that the standard for drinking water must be demonstrably safe, and that our communities are entitled to that standard being applied. But the council also agrees with proposals to strengthen the regulatory framework to make sure that there is compliance. We do not agree that a prescriptive approach into one particular method of managing risk, namely mandatory residual disinfection, is appropriate. It has significant potential unintended consequences and can create an environment of complacency. That chlorine fixes all mentality, which we know can be detrimental in terms of properly assessing and managing risk, must be avoided. So that's the position I've put to government ministers, and that is the position that the council has. So we're going to continue to work as hard as we can to remove the chlorine, and we have to do everything within our power to make sure that it stays out. Pauline?
All right, thank you. Yes, look, I think this report is really good too, and I particularly like the table with the recommendations of Bruce Robertson and the status update table correlating to that. And the prime objective of this review, you're right, Leanne, is providing assurance of the future for Christchurch's unchlorinated water supply. And as a result of that, we dedicated a drinking water improvement program and a manager to that, and that's progressing incredibly well. But of course, we are waiting for the guidelines from central government on the new regulatory standards. But in anticipation of that, we are now focusing on our reticulation network. The bi-monthly reporting to ITI and the council is moving towards proactive monitoring and compliance, better reporting of any transgressions, and looking at continual improvement in risk management. And it now rates very high, or particularly high on the risk register, which is fantastic in audit and risk. And we're adopting an approach for risk management and quality assurance that is fully integrated across the unit and across council, as we see in the resolution there. Page 191 is very interesting too, with our list of improvements, which includes smart water network and real-time monitoring, and that's going to be a huge help with our reticulation network, and that alongside with being able to isolate zones if there are any transgressions. I think that's going to put us in very good stead if some bad news comes out from central government. At this point, I'd like to refer everyone to the draft integrated water strategy, which is now out for consultation, and particularly Objective 11, which is about safe, sustainable water supply, ensuring we can deliver without residual disinfectant. So if anyone would like to submit on that, supporting that objective, I think that we would find that very helpful, and that closes on the 14th of July. And the Mayor mentioned the letter from the West Melton Zone Committee, written on the 15th of April to Minister Clark. And one of the lines is, the committee would like to know if the Ministry of Health have a program of work focused on the research into the connection between nitrates in the water and colorectal cancer. If so, how this research will be used to determine the appropriateness of the maximum allowable value for nitrates. If not, the committee would like to see the Ministry of Health work with research institutes to prioritise studies on the relationship between nitrate levels and colorectal cancer in New Zealand. This is of national interest and is critical we understand the risks that nitrate levels pose in our communities and in New Zealand. And the basic response was dishing the Danish report because it didn't really have enough evidence, they didn't think, and stating that the Ministry does not consider it appropriate to change the maximum allowable value on the basis of this one study and in the absence of World Health Organisation advice and recommendations. So the Internal Agency for Research on Cancer has classified nitrate as Group 2A, brackets probable carcinogens, but advises the weight of evidence is that there is unlikely to be a causal association between gastric cancer and nitrates in drinking water. Thank you again for writing. And that was actually replied from Deborah Woodley, who's the Deputy Director General of Population Health and Prevention. So just a heads up that the committee is responding yet again to this response to the letter, saying that they did not answer the question. So on that note, I declare I'm very happy to support this recommendation.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's